So I sold my Aputure 600X, and instead of it, I got an Aputure 400X, and I'm gonna talk to you about the things that I like and don't like about this light. By the way, if you don't wanna hear me talk, you could skip to the part of the video where I just show comparisons of this light versus some of the other lights that I have. And some of the tests are with and without a softbox, with and without a reflector, just to be able to demonstrate some of the points that I'm gonna be talking about in this video. This light is not as bright or brighter than the Aputure 600X. This is the case with a lot of the new lights coming out nowadays, not just from Aputure, but from Amaran, from Nanlite. Essentially, they narrow down the beam angle of the light and they say, oh, the light is now 30 or 40 or 50% brighter, or twice as bright. Technically, that's true if you're measuring it in the absolute center of where the light is hitting. Like if the light is hitting here and you measure it in the center, it's gonna be brighter if the beam angle is narrower because all of the light is concentrated in the center. But if you measure it right here, the brightness will be way, way lower. Now with some of the older lights, the beam angle was a little bit wider. So sure, when you measure the center, it's a little dimmer, but as you go to the side, it's not gonna go as dim as the newer lights. So in other words, these newer lights, the Aputure 400X, the Amaran Ray lights that just came out recently, the Nanlux lights, and some of the other Godoxes that have already been out, and the newer lights, their beam angles are a little bit more concentrated. And so because of that, you're gonna see much higher lux numbers being thrown around, but that's not because the light is actually producing more output. So what does this mean for the Aputure 400X? And has it been a hindrance for me? No, it hasn't been a hindrance. It's been working perfectly for my uses, and it's more than bright enough for 99% of my scenarios. And if it's not bright enough for a scenario, then I always have other lights that I can use with it, you know, to help bring up the overall brightness and ambience in a shot. So it's not really a problem for me, but it could be a problem for you. So here's a quick little rundown. I think if you're using this light with a Fresnel, which by the way, I don't have, and in this review, I'm not gonna be talking about the Fresnel, it's gonna be able to throw light further away than the 600X because of the narrower beam angle. So for example, if you're lighting a scene where you're in a living room and you put the light outside and have it shoot through a window to simulate harsh sunlight, then this light is actually really good. But if you're using this light with a softbox, especially the really big softbox, the 150 Aputure dome, you're gonna notice that there's a little bit more of a hot spot in the center of the softbox than there is if you were using an Aputure 600X. Well, that's because the beam angle is a little narrower, and so it won't fill the softbox as evenly as another COB light with a wider beam angle. Now, if you wanna equalize that softness, what you'd need to do is use one of those inner diffusion sheets that you can put in a softbox that sits between the COB light and the actual outside diffusion of the softbox. But then the problem is that reduces the output of the light because you're adding more diffusion. So at the end of the day, you're not gonna get the same output as an Aputure 600X if you're using this with a softbox. Now, I've used this light with a softbox next to a 600X in one of my shoots from last month. Basically, it was a large space and we needed to have basically a large, soft key light for a bunch of musicians, and we're gonna film them in a sort of a big area. So what we did is we set up a 600X with a 150 dome, and then right next to it is the 400X with the standard softbox size next to it to kind of create a bit of a wrap. And both of these lights were set at about 30 to 40%. So we weren't blasting the lights, and we also had grids on, so that also reduces the output. So using both of these lights at 30%, we were able to get a really good exposure for that entire space. And we didn't have any ambient light coming in from outside or house lights. So even given the fact that it has a narrower beam angle, which makes it less ideal for softboxes, rest assured it's still gonna be a really bright light for many scenarios. Right now, actually, I'm shooting in this environment, and right now I'm exactly at 30% intensity, and I have a grid on my softbox. So multiple stops of ND and a grid and a double layered diffusion softbox. I forgot to mention that part, and I'm only at 30%. So that's really my biggest gripe, is it has a narrower beam angle. All right, there's one more thing that I don't like about it. The bag that it comes with is great, and it is a little bit smaller and lighter than the Aputure 600X, but it's still large enough to be awkward to carry. And this bag doesn't come with wheels or one of those, luggage handles. The 600X comes with it. Yeah, it's a bigger and bulkier bag, but at least I can drag it on the floor pretty easily. All right, and those are the only two things that I didn't like. The rest is all really good stuff. So first of all, the build quality, it's perfect. And obviously it's IP65 rated. So it's really good for if it's raining a little bit outside, it's not gonna be a problem. I haven't been in those situations, and I don't plan on testing it out. Also, I like that the light is smaller and lighter than the 600X. It makes it easier to boom over if I ever needed to do that. Also, whenever I do buy the Fresnel, which I probably will soon enough, and I'll make a follow-up video on how much I like it or dislike it, the Fresnel itself that's made for this light is also much smaller and more manageable to store and travel with than the 600X one, the F10 Fresnel. Another thing that I really like about the control box is all of the inputs, the DMX and the power and all that stuff are all at the top of the ballast. They're not at the bottom. So you don't have to go in and look at where it is. You could just plop it in, you know exactly where it should go. Last but not least, this isn't a full RGB light, but it has a lot of color capabilities. So if I ever want to do some color work, just throw in a little bit of red or a little bit of magenta or a little bit of blue somewhere or cyan or light blue, you could totally do that with this light. Even though this is called a 400X, you're still getting a lot more color capability than the 600X ever gave you. The 600X doesn't even have a green and magenta shift. Last but not least, the thing I love most about this light is the whole Blair engine thing, which really means it has a high SSI rating, especially for an LED light. And this is really exciting for the LED world in general because Aputure isn't the only one that's doing this now. The new Amaran lights, the new Nanlux lights are all now starting to have this high SSI rating trend. And it's really good because it means you're gonna get a more accurate daylight or tungsten look out of these LEDs. So yeah, I love this light. If you're looking for a light to replace your 600X because you want something just as powerful or more powerful, I would look into the 700X, not the 400. I see the 400X as a big upgrade to the 300X rather than an upgrade to the 600X. It is not. It is more of a side grade or even a slight downgrade depending on how you use the light